everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So today I want to talk about what to plant in November. Today is the middle of November, I don't know, 14th maybe. So there's a lot of things you can still plant here in Northeast Florida. Now this is primarily for people down south. All you northerners, all you northerners, can't really help you. It's hard to plant when you got snow on the ground. Alright, so in November it says beets, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, Chinese cabbage, collards, kale, kohlrabi, leeks, onions, bulbing onions, bunching parsley, radish, and spinach. Alright, so here where I'm at in the Jacksonville area, our average first frost is December 3rd. So you're going to want to plant things that can take a frost. Like I noticed, is lettuce on there? Yeah, lettuce is not really on there. It will do okay in a frost. It just kind of depends. So these are all things that you can kind of count on that will make it through the winter and hopefully continue to grow so that you got greens and such to eat and enjoy throughout the wintertime. Now, obviously in the wintertime, one of the things you got to think about is the sun is going to be to the south. Alright, so basically you're going to want your taller plants to the north, shorter plants to the south. Okay, unless you're running north-south rows, in which case you should be okay because hopefully it'll get at least partial sun all day long. Alright, so with that being said, some things you want to think about is the height of things. Alright, so now I've already planted behind me, I've got cabbage planted, I've got carrots, and I've got chard there, I've got tatsoi there, and collards there. What did I say? Carrots and chard. Alright, so I've got tatsoi and I've got chard over there. I got some broccoli planted, but it hasn't sprouted up yet, so we'll see how that ends up going. So the first thing we're going to do is do some radishes, because radishes stay pretty small. And I thought these were radishes, but they're not. I have some in here somewhere. There's my spinach, there's my radish. Now, which one's going to go taller, the spinach or the radish? It's hard to say. I will say that the radishes tend to be a lot more successful. For some reason, I've been having an issue getting spinach to grow at all here. I don't know, it's been kicking my butt. So we'll figure that out as we go along. I don't know what's going to end up happening with that. But these French breakfast radishes are really nice radish that grow really quick. Outstanding radish to grow, in my opinion. Alright, so I highly recommend them. Alright, so we're going to start with the radishes. Now, when you look at the seeds, alright, remember my rule of thumb is that you want to do about 3 times the size of the seed as far as your depth in the garden. So, hopefully you can kind of see that. Now those are really tiny seeds. You can see my finger. Now they're not as small as some, but they're pretty tiny. So you don't really need to plant these real deep. Okay? So I usually try and do about a 1/4 inch. And you can do that with a hoe, or you can do it with your fingers. And I want to give them enough room that I'm not going to have the radishes right up against the wood. So I give them about 4 inches. Now, one of the nice things about radishes is not only do they grow quick, but if you're in a hunger situation, or even if you're not, radishes are really good to grow because you don't have to wait for the radish to mature to actually go about eating it. Alright, you can actually eat the greens. Radish greens are a good, healthy food that you can eat at your leisure. And they take about 28 days to mature. So here in less than a month, I'll have mature radishes. At least hopefully. But in less than that, in probably about 2 weeks, I'll have greens that are big enough to eat. At least in theory. How far apart do you plant them? Well, if you don't want to thin them, I give them at least twice the size of your anticipated fruit, or root, actually. So, you know, radishes get about that big around, so go about that far apart, so about 3 inches or so. Now, don't be afraid to add a few extras as far as seeds, because not all of them are going to germinate. And I know you're like, wow, they should all germinate. Okay, that's fine. Probably not. Now, when it comes to radishes, there's several different varieties, and you know, whatever you like to eat is the ones I would plant. With some suggestions are these French breakfasts, because they're a nice, tasty, quickly growing radish. And then I also like to grow daikon radishes. And the reason is the daikons really seem to do well in the wintertime. And they make a really nice big radish, and there's a lot of different things you can do with them. Some people like to cook them. I really don't like the taste of them cooked myself. I've even heard of people doing French fries with them and so on. But not probably what I'm going to do. I like them raw in the salad. So now we got our radishes planted. Now what I want to do is behind that I'm going to grow some spinach. Now how far apart do you want to put them? So those were out about 4 inches. I'm going to go at least 4 inches. So I'm going to go out into this direction. And the reason is if I get in a mood to go ahead and hoe my garden, which I don't always do, I'll be honest with you. A lot of times I will just pull the weeds instead of hoeing them. But hoeing is quicker, and everybody should get a chance to go out hoeing at least every so often, if you know what I mean. But it's good to put enough of a gap to where you can get a hoe between them without damaging the plants, so that if you do decide you want to go through and take the weeds out with a hoe or another implement, you want the room in there to be able to do that. Now once again, they're about the same size, so we didn't go real deep. And then when it comes to this spinach, I'm going to plant this thick because I haven't had it always grow. And this is going to be my only real spinach patch. So we're just going to go through and sprinkle it all in there and use up what I got. It's crazy, the first year or two that I grew here, I had great luck with spinach. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. But after that, for some reason, it just seems as though spinach just does not want to grow, which sucks because my kid really likes spinach. That's one of her favorites. Between that and Swiss chard, the white Swiss chard, and then tatsoi, which if you can't get spinach to grow, I've had really good luck with tatsoi, and it's a great spinach substitute. So, highly recommend it. And that's what I'm going to do there. Now, because I came to this session unprepared, I forgot to make my labels. But we're just going to take a label and stick it in there, and then I got this video to remind me of what went where. Alright? It's one of the advantages of making videos, is I can look back and track them. But you might be able to tell I'm starting to run out of daylight, which is happening pretty quick right now because of the damn daylight savings time, which I totally disagree with. I don't think daylight savings time is really a great thing. Alright, so I got my radishes, I got my spinach. Now something taller behind. What should we go with? I'll do beets somewhere else. Turnips I'll do somewhere else. Did it say turnips? When did it say to plant turnips? Turnips, it says September. There's spinach, kale. Let's do some kale back there. Still got some of that blue kale, I think. I did the lettuce in the house, or not in the house, but in the patio. Oh, it's right there. Mostly because it's easier to grab. I can go in there and just grab it whenever I want. So I like having that there. So I'm going to do two things with the kale. Now the kale, I'm going to go ahead and plant a row back here. Alright, but I'm also going to grow some in pots and then put it in the greenhouse so that come springtime I'll have some fresh new kale plants to put out in the spring. Alright, now once again, kale seeds are pretty small. So we're just going to dig a small short furrow. Well, let's go a little further back. Alright. And I'm going to plant extras. I'm sorry, did I say small short? Small shallow furrow. There we go, like so. And then I have a good amount of seeds, so I'm going to be generous. Just kind of sprinkle them along, and I'll thin them as we go. And then I'll give plants away to my kids, except for the one that lives here. There. Oh, cover that up. I'll come back to probably tomorrow and mark these. And tomorrow I got to do some work on somebody's car. Or help somebody do work on the car, I should say. Just because I got a little more experience than he does. Okay. And there you go. Between the spinach, the kale, and the radishes, and then of course I've got tatsoi, I've got lettuce growing in the patio, I've got collards, I got some broccoli hopefully coming up, which I'm going to try and do. I got some chard over here, some carrots, and I've got some cabbage over there. So once all this starts to grow, I should have a plentiful supply of greens for a good long time. Alright, so at least until the summer rolls around. Particularly because kale will continue to grow. Spinach not so much. Radishes I'll keep replacing as we go along. Carrots I'll be able to get as I want. Chard you can cut and come again, so you can keep on harvesting from that. Same thing with the lettuce. Cabbage not so much, though we tend to eat the leaves more than we do the actual cabbage itself. But that's what I got planted today. That's what I got planted in the garden so far, along with the stuff that's there. Like you see all of the sweet potato growing back in there. Got some more sweet potato over there. I've got some chives, some garlic, these onions here, a few pepper plants that are struggling, but they're still trying. So hasn't been my best so far this year, but anyway, so I still got a few things growing, and then of course I've still got my longevity spinach. I've got a little bit of kale in the patio. I've got the lettuce in the patio. I've got a little bit of Malabar spinach, so it's starting to seed out here pretty soon. What else? Oh, and then of course sweet potato leaves. You can eat sweet potato leaves too. I've still got a little bit of the, well actually I got quite a few of the little finger eggplant that are still sprouting. So I've got things growing that I can eat that I'll be able to continue on munching on all the way into the springtime. All right. One of the things I will tell you is you don't have to go by a guide like what I do or what I tell you. You can look at the various packages and see, okay, like kale, ideal temperature 45 to 85. All right. Now, usually if it's down in the 40s, it'll withstand a frost. That's a good, cue or clue. Same thing with spinach. Now, it'll take a light frost. It will freeze back, but it'll usually come back. All right. We can't do things like cucumbers, tomatoes, things like that. They will definitely freeze off. Potatoes, you can try, but every time I planted potatoes and the tops freeze, the plant dies. So I don't think that that's an actual legitimate possibility. Another thing you can do, which is what I'm going to do with my garlic here in just a few minutes, is go through and mulch them real well. All right, so a lot of times what kills the plant is the roots getting cold. So as long as the roots stay semi-warm, and that's usually the case here, but a mulch layer will help even out those temperatures, keep them cooler on the really hot days and keep them warmer on the really cold days. That's one of the advantages, as well as evening out the moisture content of the soil. But that will really help out a lot, usually, in keeping your things alive through extreme weather. It's been a busy day for airplanes today. All right, so that's what I got going on. I highly recommend you get some things planted. If you're worried about the frost, put them in pots. 5-gallon buckets make fantastic pots. They're cheap. They're like, I don't know, $3, $4, $5 a piece. Drill some holes in the bottom, fill it full of dirt, and then if you're worried about the frost, you can just pick up your buckets, take them in the house, and then when it's warm, warm back up in the morning, you can take them back out. Another alternative is a greenhouse. My buddy's got a greenhouse going. I've got a small greenhouse that I put out. I highly recommend that as well. It does help to maintain that temperature when it gets cold out. Though I would tell you, if you're going to do that, you're probably going to have some sort of heat source in your average plastic greenhouse, or greenhouse covered with plastic. Some sort of heat source to keep it from freezing, because just because you got it covered doesn't mean that it won't get cold. All right, particularly if we get like the end of the 20s like we did last year, which is unusual. It doesn't really happen here on a regular basis. All right, so that's what I got going on. I'll probably do another thing. I got some things I want to talk about and doing Jim Bob in the weeds here shortly, but we'll get into that later. I'm trying to get more into it, but this is just not the season. Most people aren't thinking about gardening right now. They're thinking about Christmas. So a lot of people don't really watch, and I'll be honest with you, I don't get out here near as often as I should in the wintertime. But come springtime, you start looking, end of February, middle of February, things are going to start banging again. So we'll be talking to you again later. Thanks once again for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe, and let me know what you think. I really do appreciate the comments. And most importantly, get something growing in your yard. I highly recommend that you have some source of food on your spot, wherever your spot may be, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house with a big yard like I have, or just a tiny house with a tiny yard. There's an amazing amount of different ways you can go about growing things. So I highly recommend it. It's very satisfying, and it's very healthy food too. All right, thanks once again, and like I said, grow something.